Hi, virtual students. We're here with Unit 1, Part 1, and getting you started here. Before I have you write this down, go ahead and find this paper. There should have been another link to it on Canvas. You're going to fill this thing out to start here. So anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Go ahead and take a quick second here on identifying what you think, something you hear about the economy, okay, as we get started. Now, if you are, anything like previous students that I've had, there's usually not necessarily an extremely concise um, guess as to what we'll be studying. A lot of people have little sections of econ. If you kind of take a look at these, you'll see that there are some things that you probably wrote down and what you might be think we're going to be studying. But it's a little bit more broad than just identifying only money or checks and balances or monetary system. All that stuff goes into the economy, and we're going to try to get to that today. So our official definition of econ is a social science concerned with the way society chooses to employ its limited resources, which have alternative uses to produce goods and services for present and future consumption. Okay, so before we get into that and talk about it one by one, this is where this paper comes in, and you're going to fill out what you know, just a quick little two statements. I want you to spend about 30 seconds on each one and write down what that portion of the definition means to you. So, for example, social science, I can write down a example. So, psychology is a good example. Or I can write down what it means to be social. So that might mean that people interact. And just go ahead and take a second, type that stuff in. Like I said, about 30 seconds per section. There's 7 sections total. Go ahead and take a second to do that and kind of get your mind going before we take the notes on this stuff. All right. Hopefully you took a second there. And if you didn't, pause the video and make sure you do that. We're going to go through each section one by one here. And you can write down what I show you. Again, just kind of give you, like I said, hopefully it gives us a little bit of an insight into some stuff that we'll be talking about here in the near future. So our first section was a social science. So economics, again, we usually think of a social studies as like a history class because that's what you've been studying in social studies for probably pretty much your entirety of your schooling career. But if you've taken government, you know that government isn't necessarily history. And so social science are going to study people's behavior. We're going to look at how people interact with each other. And in this case, there's going to be a little bit more to this definition, but some other examples are sociology and psychology as social sciences as well. We're going to analyze how people, and that means individuals and businesses, but also greater sizes of people, such as governments. We're going to look at how they make choices. And so our economy has to make choices for any number of reasons. Sometimes our choices are extremely, bearing on a really large group of the population, right? So when we choose our president, or if we choose to raise taxes, or if we do choose to go to war, all those things, making choices on how we're going to do stuff. A lot of them are a lot simpler. Okay, thinking about like, okay, am I going to go to school today, or am I going to sleep in, or am I going to stay up late and watch one more episode of something on Netflix or whatever? So a lot of them are extremely less dramatic than some of the things I mentioned at first, but we are going to analyze how societies make choices, and we can look at individuals within those societies too. The reason we've got to make choices is because we've got limited resources, okay? And we're going to boil our limited resources down into, we can make them really big categories. So money, labor, okay, that's going to be the people that can do stuff, and natural resources. And we'll throw time in there too because our time is limited as well. So again, how are we going to, how is a society, tying this all in together, okay? How is a society going to, use the stuff it has to produce what it needs, or in some cases, what it wants, right? How are you going to decide how to produce something with your limited time, right? You have labor skills, to make money someday. And maybe some of you guys are utilizing that right now. Adding to that, we also know that our skills, okay, our resources have alternative uses, right? We can, on a real simple scale, we can look at a tree and like, okay, We can use a tree for lumber to build a house. We can use it to make pencils. We can use it to make paper. We can do all sorts of stuff. Just like you can use your time and your skills, whatever those are, to produce whatever it is going to be to make money someday as well. And so, um, again, we're making choices because we have alternatives that we can use as we are trying to identify what we're going to do. Okay, economies have, so you're going to answer that on a little bit more. Societies have a little bit more complicated when they say, okay, like how are we going to decide what is eventually produced? Like, how does a farmer decide if they're going to grow corn or grow soybeans? Well, really simply put, it's going to be they're going to decide just like a tree, a person that cuts a tree down, they're going to give that tree to whoever gives them the most money, right? And so the way that our economy works for the most part in the United States is that if somebody can make a profit by selling something, they're going to sell it to whoever wants to use it the most. And the way we say the most is who's going to pay the most money. We kind of mentioned we're not going to go too much into depth on this one, but we got to produce goods and services. Now, we produce stuff and we buy stuff to achieve a maximum satisfaction. Okay, so whatever we pay for, whatever we spend our money on, whatever again, even the job that we choose and what we're going to produce someday, we're trying to achieve a maximum satisfaction. Notice I didn't say profit, okay, because making money isn't as important for some people as it is others. And so if, the satisfaction is not having to work super hard physically, or the satisfaction might be having a lot of vacation time, or a stable schedule, or whatever that is. Again, that term satisfaction is important to understand that there's a difference between that and profit as we continue to talk about how people behave. We talk about today and into the future. Again, there are decisions being made, probably most specifically by the government, that are, in preparation for, can we sustain how we produce stuff in present day. So is pollution a problem? And some people think it's a real big problem, some people think it's not such a big problem, but we're trying to think about not only today and what do we need today, but also what we'll need in the future, and how we're going to sustain this type of lifestyle, whatever that is, however you would describe it, into the future, or how do we even make it better? So we don't focus too much on the past. You can't change it. Again, we've already made those decisions. We're focusing on decision making for today and tomorrow, so to speak, and even further into the future as well. You guys are in the middle of this right now, right? Deciding what you're going to do after high school. That's a big decision, right? It's hard to look 4 years into the future if a 4 year college is your plan. Like, even if you're going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to enter the workforce right after high school, like, it's hard to look at what you're going to look like at 22 years old, right? And the skills that you might have and those types of things, what you're going to need as a 22-year-old. It's extremely difficult to do, but you should be trying to figure that out. And then, just talking about the things that we consume, right? Once we use things, we can't reuse them. Even if you want to look at it as like, how do I utilize my income? How do I spend my money? And again, as we make these decisions, knowing like I can't spend my money in two different places, right? I can save my money in place A and then go spend it in place B, but again, once I decide to spend my money, or especially my time somewhere, I can't get that back. The fancy word we use for that is consumption, which we'll use a whole lot more in the near future. All right. So what I want you to do here is give me something that you would like to get a clearer definition of. Explain if needed. Maybe it's something that we can discuss right away. Maybe it's something that we're going to talk about here in the near future. But just trying to gauge your interest in terms of getting to know this subject. Okay. We'll talk soon. We'll see you for Unit 1, Part 2.